the reminder. Welcome everyone to the Finance, Resource and Corporate Committee, 10th of November. So we have apologies from Councillor Pandor, Councillor Swift and Councillor Jeffries, thank you. But thank you very much Councillor Morley and Councillor Scullion for stepping in as the proxy. So let's move on from apologies. Declarations of interest. Do any members have any interest they'd like to declare? Items on the agenda? No. Thank you. And also we have no items on the agenda which require the exemption of press and public. However, we will be having a later meeting after the live streaming has ended on a couple of other issues. So the minutes of the meeting held on the 6th of September. Are there any comments or questions? No. Super, thank you. Let's move on then to item 5, financial performance report. So I'm going to hand over to Angela, our Director of Corporate and Commercial Services, to take us through that paper. Thank you, Angela.
Thank you, Mayor. So this paper is your regular update on financial performance. In terms of the revenue budget, we are currently reforecasting based on the Q2, building in the inflation impacts and other known changes. Clearly, there is a fiscal event scheduled next week, which may have a bearing on our funding and expenditure, and we will wait along with everybody else to see what that means. We currently hope we are on track to balance this year's budget. There are some non-recurring savings that we should be able to use to counterbalance other increases, but we will bring that detailed information forward to you all in a separate session. We continue to monitor bus tendered services as agreed at an earlier meeting this summer after the Combined Authority approved environments to the tendered services budget, and Appendix 1 is simply your confirmation that those extra checks are still continuing, and at the moment we are continuing in line with budget. There are clearly pressures on that budget, and that will come through in the work we're doing on budget forecasts in future years, but we're currently spending in line with the approved budget for the current year. There's then a bit of a bigger update on the capital programme, showing where we're up to at the end of Q2. The report highlights some of the successes that we've had in some of the programmes. It gives a bit of progress on each of them. It does obviously have some relevance to the following item, which is looking at the impact of inflation on the capital programme, but this is for the current projects in progress underway. This gives you a bit of a snapshot of where we've made some good progress, where there are some slight delays, but it will be the forecast for the year and future years will be revised following the subsequent paper and the decisions that are recommended onto the Combined Authority. I think I'll pause there. Happy to take questions on any of those aspects. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any questions? Yes, thank you, Councillor Hinchcliffe.
Just obviously we're all waiting on tenterhooks for the 17th of November for the financial statement in House of Commons, so all this really is conjecture until we actually get some firm financial leadership from government. And obviously what we're all hoping for really is that they recognise the value of devolved authorities, of local authorities, to be able to continue building, continue delivering services during this really hard time for people. And you know, everything that we read today and everything we talk about today is very much dependent on what's in that statement on the 17th of November. So just want to make that point really.
Thank you, Councillor Hinchcliffe, and I couldn't agree more. And certainly in every letter that I've written to government, and there has been a churn of ministers, so we're very good at letter writing, we have said that local authorities should not be the collateral damage for a financial crisis made in number 10. It is not our fault that we're in this situation, and we haven't been speaking about spending cuts for you know, up until the chaos of the Truss budget. So this is not of our making, and we shouldn't be paying the price. So I've made that case very clear to government as well. Thank you. Okay, Angela, if you'd like to move on.
There are no recommendations for that item other than just to note it. So I think that probably concludes that item. Thank you. And I think Melanie will take you through the detail of the capital one.
Thank you. And now over to you, Melanie.
Sorry, thank you. we're always further behind on our spend at Q2. So we are still forecasting higher spend to year end, but it's fair to say that having looked at the inflation review and particularly spend in Transport Fund and TCF, we've asked all schemes to look at value engineering wherever possible, and it does mean that you're in the design phase for longer before you move into delivery. On the capital programmes, we will see a bit of an underspend this year in terms of what was forecast, and we can revise that.
Thank you, Melanie. One of the things that I'm concerned about is government talking about that they're looking to have league tables. We are working as hard as we can with government decisions too late. Our projects are delayed, and we can't then be called out because it isn't of our making. So yet again, the chaos shouldn't then come on our shoulders. So I wonder if you can just provide a little bit of reassurance around delayed projects. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And if I particularly look at CRSTS, so the City Region Sustainable Transport Fund, the transport settlement, we didn't get our approval through until July, and yet this is year one of the programme and we've already missed the first quarter. So government have allowed us to reprofile the spend in our Q2 return, but they haven't allowed us to reprofile the milestones. So we're already behind on milestones because the programme started late. Now, everybody's in a similar position, but we need to understand how our progress is going to be monitored, and surely not against the information that was provided, assuming an April start, and we didn't get an April start. So we will be making the case there that, you know, we need to then be able to review this. And I think in terms of the inflation review and the impact that that's having in terms of delivery, it is absolutely the right thing to do to make sure that we are spending our money wisely and to make sure that we are putting forward our best projects. Hence why we have gone through the inflation review over the last few months, and it's coming up as the next item.
Thank you. Councillor Scullion.
Thank you. I think that's absolutely right. But I think what's really important to us is the timetable at the other end, the lack of flexibility in terms of the deadlines at the other end. And partly that is important because having lots of different funding pots which are calling on the same trades and skills means that the market overheats in terms of, you know, supply chain materials, but also in terms of labour. And it leads to unhealthy peaks in terms of demand. And I think that's another problem in terms of capacity and skill to deliver on the ground against that very short timetable. And so flexibility at the end is one of the things that we need to be really arguing for. Thank you.
Thank you. And certainly it was a pleasure to meet apprentices on the green roof of Halifax bus station last week and seeing what those big building companies are doing with this skills shortage. So it was very welcome to see that. Councillor Morley.
Yeah, but also as mentioned in the report, so a lot of these schemes as well was drawn up well before the pandemic hit, and especially thinking some of the train station improvements for parking. We're still seeing in some of the stations around Wakefield, especially the Howard station that's on this programme, that people parking them stations haven't come back to where there was pre-pandemic. Are they going to come there? So it is I think it is worthwhile that we need to reevaluate some of these schemes and how they're still needed in some of our communities.
Thank you. Councillor Lewis.
Thank you. It's a similar point to Councillor Morley. I know we're going on to paper, but the Guiseley Station scheme is another one where a scheme that was developed before lockdown, relevant then, and I know people in Guiseley prefer to see that. Won't be sorry to see the scheme stopped now, given that we don't have the pressure on car park, and we're certainly keen to work with them on walking and cycling options to Guiseley Station rather than a car park.
Thank you. And it is true that some schemes don't necessarily fit with our new agenda post-COVID, especially around climate change. So I do really appreciate the flexibility that partners have shown when coming to budgets and projects. Councillor Hinchcliffe.
Yeah, and on the other side of the equation, of course, some of these schemes will continue to progress.
Yes.
Because we all know that now and again, as well as not giving approvals when they should in government, they also give us a deadline of 6 weeks from now. You need to get this kind of project in to be able to compete in this national competition. So we in Bradford will certainly continue working on these projects because this is very much part of our pipeline. There's lots of assurances that that's the approach that we're taking, really.
You have certainly my commitment to that, that these are projects that are going to be developed for the pipeline. You're absolutely right that governments say, have you got this, have you got that, with you know, a couple of million to spend. We need to be able to react swiftly with projects that have already been worked up to certain levels of business case in order to deliver. We can't be left behind, and so we should definitely have things on the shelf ready to go. And thank you and welcome to Councillor Scott for making the journey in from Kirklees, and thank you very much for representing Shubir Pandor. Melanie, do you want to just comment on what's been said?
Yeah, I mean, just on the inflation review, we've worked really closely with the partner council teams. We've jointly come up with proposals here, and we've looked at financial viability of schemes, we've looked at deliverability, and we've looked at strategic fit, and particularly the sustainable transport aspects of that. So we've looked at all three of those elements. Now, there are some schemes that are more sustainable, but at the moment, as has been said, it's maybe not the right time to progress those. So certainly for the park and ride and the park and rail schemes, at the moment, the demand levels haven't yet reached pre-pandemic levels, and they are increasing, and there will be a time when we want to resurrect those schemes. But at the moment, we'll take them up to the next decision point, that's the recommendation, and have them ready on a pipeline to then take off that pipeline and fund as and when. But at the moment, it would be difficult to make a commercial case if the demand levels have not returned to pre-pandemic levels, but they're getting there.
Thank you. Councillor Scott.
Apologies for being late, the train was cancelled, so I endeavoured to get here. Kirklees are disappointed that some of the schemes have been withdrawn or paused, but happy to support any recommendation with the proviso that when things do restart, that we are looked at as a priority, because this is going to have a massive impact on us. But we do thank you for, you know, what's been put there.
If I can thank all partners, right at the beginning, I said if we're going to make changes, then everyone is part of this story, and everyone has stepped up to understand what needs to be done. And no project is being abandoned. It's going into pipelines and to potentially when there's other different funding streams and so on. So I want to thank everybody for that. Before we come to that recommendation, I just want to celebrate that Sturton Park and Ride has been awarded the British Construction Industry Award for National Transport Project of the Year. That keeps winning awards left, right and centre. So I want to thank the teams that made that happen and the vision, and to continue that innovation and that boldness for our region. So I'd just like to put that on record. Are we all happy to move on from that paper and to recommend? Great, thank you. Oh, sorry, Councillor.
So on the Sturton Park and Ride, I think it's worth noting that it beat some of the Crossrail schemes for that award. So we do things better in London up here, even if we don't have as much money as they do, and I hope the government notice that.
Thank you. Well, everywhere I go, I sing and dance about Sturton. In fact, I take people there as visits. Please let me take you to Sturton. So, yeah, absolutely. So if we're all content, let's move on to the inflation on the transport programmes. So back to you, Melanie.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So we have worked closely with all the teams, as we've discussed in the previous item. We identified a number of schemes that we could either pause or pipeline to get some savings in the programmes. And we've identified 270 million that we will take out of the existing TCF and Transport Fund programmes. And as we said in the previous item, we will then put those schemes onto a pipeline. We'll work them up to OBC, which is the outline business case, or the FBC, which is the full business case. And it means that when funding becomes available, we have some schemes that are ready to go. It also means that we can push ahead with the projects that currently are asking for more money because of inflation issues that are just about to go on site. So we're protecting those schemes that are furthest on, but also are meeting the criteria that we'd set and taking that forward. So there's still some final figures to agree in terms of where schemes have been split, and an element of it is progressing. But we've got recommendations here for those schemes where we'd pause them, those schemes where we'd seek other funding to make them be able to continue, and those schemes where they're asking for more money at this stage, and because we know there's an existing funding gap at this stage, we're looking to push those. So we've set out the proposals. There's various appendices that have got projects, if you like, in different categories, but I'm happy to take any questions if members want any further clarification.
Thank you. And if I may say that as an MCA, we're one of the first to be acting so swiftly and so collaboratively. So thank you very much, everybody in the team as well, who got this tricky piece of work over the line. Any comments, questions? No, great stuff. So we're happy to move on from that paper. Brilliant. Thank you. So let's move on to corporate planning and performance. Back to you, Angela. I'm so sorry, to James.
Thank you, Mayor. So this paper reports on key performance indicators for the quarter ending in September 2022. Detail outlined in the appendices, which includes red, amber and green ratings and commentary on progress. The appendix shows a good mix of green, amber and red progress. Overall cost inflation and budget pressures are presenting as an overall risk to performance. It's good to have a positive success story in there as the case study from Employment and Skills team to make some of this sort of real, and that outlines a helpful a success story involving skills matching for young people in the digital tech sector with a link to a video. The paragraph 2.6 on page 32 also flags some negative movement on 3 KPIs. The report also flags progress on business planning, including some work in year to reflect challenges emerging from inflation and new and emerging areas of work. Draft business plans and budgets will be brought to the Combined Authority meeting in December. Thank you.
Super, thank you. And I think it's worth noting the global chip shortage is affecting everyone, and if we could resolve this problem, I think we would be millionaires, wouldn't we? And we need to be best friends with whoever is the leaders in Taiwan. So I do think this is proving to be a challenge. Just one thing regarding the no, I'll move on. Any comments from anyone? No? Well, that was short and sweet. Thank you so much, James. Okie doke. So that's the end of this section of the meeting. When's the next meeting? Do we have a date? Is it into January? All right, we'll inform everybody about the next meeting. So thank you. This ends the live stream and public part of the meeting.